In this series, we've been discussing how to break down long sentences and how grammar and some tips and strategies can help you turn something long, complicated, and frustrating into something simple and easy to understand. This is part 3, things to look out for. In this video, we'll be discussing certain things that are used when they're writing the reading passages and grammar that you can take a look at so that you're aware of how it works and how you can use it to your advantage when you're attempting to understand a long sentence. So the 2 grammar points that we'll go over here are things to just be aware of so that you don't get confused. This will also help you match information to the correct location so that you definitely understand what's being said and you don't see a grammar point that you feel unfamiliar with and that makes it harder for you to understand these long sentences. So point 1 is the omission of relative pronouns such as who, which, and that. Oftentimes in reading that is academic, they will omit the use of who, which, and that as long as they are not being used as a subject. So an example of this is here. The American economic system, organized around a basically private enterprise, is a market-oriented economy. Now, another way to say this would be the American economic system, which or that is organized around a basically private enterprise. So if you see a clause like this, there could be a chance that it has omitted who, which, or that, and this phrase here is referring to what comes before the American economic system. The second sentence here, as Patrick Kirch, an American anthropologist, points out, so here we have for this clause, as Patrick Kirch, and that could be who or that is an American anthropologist. So this here means Patrick Kirch is an American anthropologist. And the final example, in a period characterized by the abandonment of so much of the realistic tradition by authors such as John Barth, Donald Barthelme, and Thomas Pynchon, Joyce Carol Oates has seemed at times determinedly old-fashioned in her insistence on the essentially mimetic quality of her fiction. So here, you don't even always need the comma. In a period that or which is characterized. So that is saying this period is characterized by the abandonment. So this is a grammar point to be familiar with and aware of so that when you're looking at the long sentences, when you're trying to break it down, you're able to match that information to what it's covering. If you can't tell what this means, what's organized, who is the anthropologist, what is characterized, then you might incorrectly break down the long sentences and arrive at incorrect conclusions. Now, the second grammar point to look out for here are prepositional phrases which begin a sentence. So if you start a sentence with a prepositional phrase, this will give you a clue to how to break down that sentence. Let's look at these 2 example sentences at the bottom of your screen. Totally without light and subjected to intense pressures hundreds of times greater than at the Earth's surface, the deep ocean bottom is a hostile environment to humans. Okay, so to break this down, essentially, this whole prepositional phrase here is describing the deep ocean. So this is a grammar point to be aware of so that you don't just see this whole section and think, what is that talking about? What is it referencing? The deep ocean is totally without light and subjected to intense pressures hundreds of times greater than at the Earth's surface. So if you see a long beginning phrase with a prepositional phrase, then you can maybe take a look first at what comes after it, and that will give you the idea of what is the subject, and the prepositional phrase is just going to be giving you more in-depth detail regarding that subject. Now let's look at this second example. Amid rumors that there were prehistoric mammoths wandering around the unknown region and that somewhere in its wilds was a mountain of rock salt 80 by 45 miles in extent, the 2 captains set out. So here we have a really long prepositional phrase that goes into a clause, and it's referencing how these 2 captains started their journey. So our 2 captains here is the subject. So again, this is a really, really long clause beginning with a prepositional phrase. So when you see something like this, look after that clause to find your subject. once you have your subject, you're able to then figure out your verb and figure out the information that you need. So you're essentially breaking down your sentence into two parts, and then you're looking at the simpler part first and then the more complicated second. So these are two grammar points that are made use of very commonly in academic and educational writings. Being aware of how they work and what they mean can help you to further break down long sentences and understand how this grammar is used so that you can figure out the meaning more quickly and more confidently.